Welcome to the channel, and in this video, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite vampire films, 2007's 30 Days of Night. It's an adaptation of the comic book of the same name that was written by Steve Niles and drawn by Ben Templesmith. It was a departure from the typical vampires I was familiar with, which was the suave, romantic vampire that entrances their victims, either for blood or to turn them into some sort of eternal companion. This movie also came out during the height of the popularity of the Twilight films, where the horror of the vampires had been completely just stripped away. 30 Days of Night was just the complete opposite. These vampires were vicious and scary, and have
black eyes like a doll's eyes.
And they have shark-like teeth, and all humans are to them is just food. I missed out on this in the theater and wound up catching it on premium cable back in high school, and I think it was on the Stars channel. Me and my friends would get really stoned after school and watch whatever was on TV, and this movie was on all the time back then. Actually, my friend Tim could even do the 30 Days of Night vampire scream. And my friend Stu, his favorite shot of the movie is the overhead shot where you see a bunch of vampire attacks, and then all of a sudden there's a dude running with a shotgun and just absolutely murks one of the vampires. Miss you, Stu. So this movie is sentimental to me, but I still think it holds up, and it really was a game changer for vampire movies, especially looking back at the landscape at the time. The comic came out in 2002, and the film rights were picked up by Ghost House Pictures, which is Sam Raimi and Rob Tapert's production company. The script went through a few iterations, and a couple screenwriters took a crack at it. Steve Niles even wrote a version of the script. David Slade was brought on board to direct. He was coming off the success of his prior film Hard Candy, a movie I highly suggest checking out. David actually funnily enough, would go on to direct the third Twilight movie after this. If you're not aware of the plot of 30 Days of Night, I'll break it down real quick. A town called Barrow, Alaska, that's so far up in the Arctic that during the winter they don't see the sun for 30 days. So a group of vampires descend upon the town, and a small group of townspeople try to survive long enough for daylight. I reread the comic for this video, and the plot beats remain sort of the same, but a lot of the character dynamics were changed for the movie. In the movie, Eben and Stella are estranged from one another, and in the comic, they're still together. Eben also doesn't have a brother or a grandmother in the comic like he does in the movie. Another difference is that Marlowe in the comic is sort of the second in command, and the movie ends up just making him the lead vampire. Also, the vampires speak in English as opposed to the movie where they speak in their own language. The only other main difference is that in the book, there is a subplot that involves a mom and son in New Orleans who uncover what the vampires are up to, and try to expose the vampires by getting photo evidence by using a helicopter to fly over Barrow. I feel like that subplot would probably get picked up in the sequel comics that followed. I would say the changes they made for the movie make sense. It streamlines the plot and adds more character development. The comic was also only 3 issues, so I can see why they decided to add more characters and take more time fleshing out the people of Barrow. Josh Hartnett leads the film as Eben, the sheriff of Barrow. I've always liked him as an actor, and that makes it easy for me to cheer for him. He does a great job portraying someone who's forced to lead under insurmountable odds, all the while doing it with his estranged wife. Melissa George plays Stella, who starts the film avoiding Eben and ends the movie holding him in her arms after he made the ultimate sacrifice to save the people of Barrow. I love that last scene, and Melissa's performance really helps elevate it. This was the first movie I remember seeing Danny Huston in. He's perfect as Marlowe, the head vampire, and I think this film is the reason why he's played a villain in so many movies since then. His performance remains as one of the best portrayals of a vampire in cinema, in my opinion. My friends and I would quote him saying "No God" like a lot back in the day. I also gotta shout out Ben Foster, who plays the Stranger. It's a smaller supporting role, but it is a pivotal one. He's pretty creepy and has this weird, unsettling accent.
You don't bring me what I want to eat, what I want to drink.
He's one of my favorite actors and is super underappreciated. I'm gonna cover the sci-fi film he starred in called Pandorum in the near future. The third act of the movie plays out pretty close to the comic, with Eben injecting himself with vampire blood. He sees that there's no other way to defeat these ruthless vampires, so he turns into one as the vampires are setting the town ablaze to cover their tracks. Eben putting his fist through the head vampire's mouth was straight out of the comic. I feel like that was something the filmmakers were keen on keeping from the comic because it's pretty fucking badass. The heartfelt scene between Eben and Stella closes out the book as well, but the dialogue is different. They're both great in their own way. I like Eben's last heartfelt words in the comic, but I also like how the film portrays Eben screaming in pain while Stella holds him in her arms. Plus the score is really great in that scene. The movie got mixed reviews from critics, which is complete horseshit, but despite that, the movie was moderately successful, and a straight-to-DVD sequel called Dark Days would come out a couple years later, and I remember it being okay, but definitely inferior to this movie. The movie is yet to get a 4K, so this Blu-ray from 2008 It's the best way to watch this movie at the moment. There might be a 4K digital version, but I'd rather own the movie physically, even if the picture quality isn't up to today's standards. It's still in print and is currently only $5. Comes with over an hour of bonus features. There's one feature that's exclusive to this Blu-ray, and it's a slideshow of images from the comic that were translated to the film. A pretty cool feature, and it's nice to see how they paid homage to Ben Templesmith's artwork. There's also a series of features on the making of the film, and they add up to being an hour long. They're pretty decent, but I wish they were a bit more thorough. There is interior artwork, which Sony did a lot for their movies early on in this Blu-ray format. I also own this 2-disc DVD limited edition set that was an exclusive to FYE. I previously talked about this in part 3 of my DVDs I Can't Part With series. The set comes with a bonus disc that includes more of the behind the scenes. It's only 25 minutes long, and some of the info was already in the special features on the standard release, but you get to see more of the post-production side, like the editing, the adding of visual effects, ADR, and sound mixing, along with seeing how the composer, Brian Retzel, I think his name is, how he came up with the score, and he had a pretty experimental approach to the score. Lastly, you get to see the cast and crew at the film's premiere at the Grauman's Chinese Theater. I walked past it last time I was in LA, and it's a lot smaller than what I perceived it to be, but it's still a pretty iconic thing to see if you're ever in Los Angeles. This set is pretty cool, and it's a stark reminder of the lame exclusives we get nowadays, where it's mainly just steelbooks, and it's been years since there was an exclusive that included additional bonus features. Well, at least when it comes to the big box stores. Also, the DVD edition of the film comes with the first episode of an anime series called Blood Plus. It has nothing to do with 30 Days of Night, but it does deal with vampirism, and for whatever reason, that was left off the Blu-ray. I also have the movie on UMD. The movie came out during the height of the PSP's popularity, and since this was a Sony movie, it makes all the sense they would make it available for their handheld. I wish they went with different cover art because every home video release has identical artwork. It would have been cool if they had Ben Templesmith do artwork for one of the releases. I've brought this with me a few times when I traveled, and since high school I've probably watched this movie like 50 times, and I still don't have any real qualms with this movie. I mean, I could do with less of the quick cuts and shaky cam, but that was just the style of the time. Lastly, I have the comic that I wanted to show again, and I had only read it once prior to this video, and it was a while ago. It's a pretty quick read, and I bought this off Amazon probably like 15 years ago. And when I opened up to read it this time, it had 2 signatures, and as I was looking it over thinking, are these real or just facsimile signatures? But they are indeed real, and this book was signed by Steve Niles and Ben Templesmith, so that's pretty fucking sweet. It's definitely a comic worth checking out if you like the movie. They both differ from each other, but are equally great. Thanks for watching this video on one of my favorite vampire movies. Let me know what you think of 30 Days of Night in the comment section below. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a movie time.